Yes, we did $119,760 in cash collected within 72 hours of a high ticket webinar. Here's the proof. I'm not going to go on fan basis and refresh it for you, but 24th to the 28th, 119,000. This is after fan basis fees, and I think slightly before I actually took that screenshot. But in this video, I've spent a lot of time making this shit. I'm going to be breaking down exactly how we did it, from the marketing to the webinar itself to the sales and the follow-up process. Those are the four things you really have to bear in mind. I'll go into like the tech side of things, automations, how we set up the funnel throughout as well. But this is going to be a real value to you if you are a growth operator who wants to run webinars, or you are an offer owner who thinks, oh, should I run a webinar? As you guys know, man like Alex Hormozi, Shelby Sapp, all of these people are running webinars, and it's for a very good reason. I've never seen anything like it. This offer, I'm going to show you the offer itself in this video. It was doing about $50,000 a month, no, $40,000 a month in March. This month we did 120K in 72 hours, and overall this month as a whole, we're going to be doing, it's the 29th today of August. We're on track for about $250,000, $260,000 in cash collected. So let's get into it. First of all, why run a webinar? Because we had a VSL funnel, it was working. Number one reason why webinars are great is because they clean up the mess. They clean up your pipeline. It's like a Hoover, bro. Because with a VSL funnel, people know that when they book a call, they're going to get sold. However, if you have leads that have had calls, I'm going to get into this, when they actually go onto a webinar and they get free training and they connect with the offer owner or whatever service they're buying, it changes their perspective. And then when they get presented an offer at the end, they are much more likely to go ahead and, of course, buy or book a call. So, marketing. Basically, it was pretty simple. It was a 95% organic webinar, so obviously that helped. Essentially, we did organic promo on long form YouTube videos. So I think we recorded 2 YouTube videos that had CTAs directly in the videos and in the description and in the pinned comment to obviously register for the webinar. We built IG story sequences and reels. So, you know, that is basically standard, like pretty standard stuff, right? Tweets, email announcements, just driving basically everything all to the registration page, Discord, Telegram posts, all of that. Something to bear in mind with IG is don't send them directly to the landing page. Tell them to reply to your story, or if you're doing a reel, comment on the reel, and then send them this sort of ManyChat automation. Because if you think about it, when someone's scrolling on Instagram stories, they might just be in that like doom scrolling sort of situation where they just can't be asked to go on a website and then watch a video and then register. So if you send this, they'll just get a message, and then when they open their messages, they'll go back to it, and that might be a better time for them to then obviously register. And you can see the click-through rate on both of these were really, really high. Also, so we did some static warm retargeting ads. We didn't actually we only spent you can see the data here. We spent 1.6K on ads, 300 registrants, cost per lead around $5 to $6, which is okay. Could have been better, to be honest. These creatives weren't the best, but we didn't have a lot of time, so we just sort of said, fuck it, let's see what we can do. Yeah, pretty basic stuff. You just do warm retargeting, lookalike audiences if you don't have that big of an Instagram, and yeah, pretty cool. Everything went to the reg page, which was essentially headline, subheadline, VSL, and then the sales letter, and then results. Very, very simple. Once a lead obviously registers with the webinar jam integration, we then send them to a confirmation page, which is like, okay, you need to watch this video and follow these steps before leaving the page. This is like a 2-minute confirmation page video, pretty simple. We did a WhatsApp group to nurture the leads, and then obviously a link to add the masterclass to their calendar. And when they actually do this on their Google Calendar or whatever calendar that they have, it sends them automatic reminders to their email. So that also really helps with show rate. Then obviously on the back end, we had Zapier. As soon as they register on Webinar Jam, it would add them to the CRM. It would also add them to an email and SMS workflow. And yeah, I've already said this, that they obviously joined the WhatsApp group that we had, where we obviously send messages and warm them up as the influencer. So you buy a WhatsApp business account and then send messages as the influencer to obviously warm up leads. But the email flow that we had, why is this so blurry? So essentially we had like a 12-step email flow. I built this in GHL. Pretty simple, just warming them up, making them ready for the webinar, sending them all the information that they need, and then SMS flow as well. So with SMS, you want to do when they register, 48 hours before, 3 hours before, and going live. So we sent 4 different SMSs to everyone. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers. Oh no, it didn't. We also did reminder ads to first world registrants. So everyone that registered and who wasn't from a third world country, because obviously with organic, you can't really, there were some unqualified leads, no doubt. We did reminder ads. This reminder ad was, I don't think we even used this one. This is way too big and packed. So essentially, it was just like reminder ads. And then the CTA was, if they click the link, was add the event to their calendar if they hadn't already. So pretty simple. Overall data from the webinar in terms of like traffic and signups and stuff, we had, let me get my pen out, we had 7,000 people visit our landing page. 2,879 people registered for this webinar, but a lot of these registrants came at the last minute. So I think 1 hour before the webinar, we had like 2,300 or 2,400 registrants. In total, overall, we had 1,546 people attend, and I think concurrent viewers was like 1,100 at the same time. That was the highest it went up to. So, you know, a 40% sign up rate, some of which was cold traffic, and then a 53% show up rate on a webinar. Of course, this is organic, but recall process, emails, SMS, all of that was pretty fucking locked in, if I do say so myself. So next, the actual webinar itself. So the framework I used for this webinar was, of course, Jason Flanagan's. For those who don't know, Hormozi consulted with him for his book launch. It is a 14-step webinar framework, and it is insane. It's absolutely insane. So essentially, I built out the presentation. As you can see on Canva, it was 344 slides long, which is absolutely nuts. And essentially, although there's 14 steps, the main sort of 3 pillars of it would be kind of too long to go into on this video. But the intro, like the first portion of the webinar, you want to break beliefs, handle common objections, you know, get some pain, do some future pacing, and engage the chat. Make sure the first part of the webinar, especially the first 5 minutes, is actually convincing people to stay for the rest of the webinar. Because just because someone shows up, it doesn't mean they're going to watch the whole thing. So that's sort of the intro. Then the training, we did like a 3-pillar sort of training mechanisms that we train people on, and they each led onto the other. So once you've solved the first pillar, there's going to be this problem and then this problem, and it was actual source, actual value, so that people were like, oh shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy knows what he's talking about. And then with the pitch, pretty much what you want to do with the pitch is a bunch of bonuses, a bunch of urgency, a bunch of scarcity, and we also did a discount, which you don't have to do, but a bunch of bonuses. And the very important thing as well is a smooth transition from training to pitch. Then after the pitch, we sort of did open Q&A. That's where you actually handle objections openly. What we also did is we brought on an ex-client who did super well inside of the program to help handle like common objections, to share his opinion on the program at the end of the masterclass. So when we pitch, we obviously CTA, okay, go ahead and apply and book in a call. But at the same time, there are still people who have that objection, this objection. Bear in mind, they've been price dropped on this webinar, right? On a 5K ticket. So this sort of objection handling Q&A part actually led to a lot more bookings towards the end of the webinar, which was super, super useful. And then what we did is on Webinar Jam, we obviously put in the chat, we had our offer, which would take them to a Typeform. And then also something super important that you guys can start doing in your webinars is have QR codes on the screen that they can scan. So if they're watching on a laptop or a PC, they can scan on their phone. So you can either do that, scan, or click the link. Both are pretty simple. Yes, so as I said, we ran an application to book a call funnel after price dropping this offer. So a lot of webinars nowadays are actually like direct to checkout. So you actually just buy on the webinar, no sales call involved. But what that sort of is difficult with that is if you're selling a 5K offer, it's going to be very difficult. Yes, you will get some conversion if it's like a really, really good offer, a well-structured webinar. But most people, when they buy a higher ticket product, normally like over 2K, over 3K, will want to speak to someone on a sales call. So what we did is we knew that we were going to have a lot of unqualified leads. We were going to have a lot of people who wanted to apply but just wouldn't be a good fit for the program. So we did a Typeform application, and it was a pretty strict Typeform. So if I show it to you, we obviously have the first page, you know, answer truthfully. We reject a lot of applications. we first get their details so we can call them if they don't end up filling out the application. Then can they commit the time? Where are they at right now? How old are they? What do they do for work and how much money do they make? Sort of financially qualifying them. What their biggest goal is, and then this is sort of the big kicker: how much capital do you have on hand or directly accessible to achieve those goals that you just sort of mentioned here? This is the capital that would be needed to dedicate to both the coaching and producing content on the YouTube channel. So it's a YouTube automation sort of coaching offer, if you couldn't already tell. So we had 4 different options: 5k, 3 to 5k, 1 to 3k, and less than 1k to my name. So these would just all get sent to our free community. We say, sorry, we can't help you inside the program. And that was like very much established on the webinar. If you don't have 4 figures, please do not apply. And then all the rest of these ones would have priority, of course. If they're ready to actually start and take action right now, they would be able to book in a call on our calendar. After that, what would actually happen, and in terms of like the back end automation side of things, it was kind of tough. Like you can imagine, we had to build out a ton of Zapier stuff. So every time we had a new Typeform, they would get put into our CRM, which is Close. If it was an unqualified application, they would obviously get bucketed as unqualified. If they were qualified, then they would be qualified. Pretty simple, but essentially we had all the Close smart views you could ever need. So a disqualified application, a qualified application that didn't book, and then obviously any bookings that came from qualified applications. In terms of the data on the applications itself and how many calls we booked from this webinar, bear in mind we price dropped at a 5k. We do have a downsell, which obviously we mentioned on the webinar itself as well. We had 1,100 concurrent viewers at most. I'm not sure if I added it. Did I add it on this talk? Maybe not. But we had 1,100 at peak. We got 300 submissions of the Typeform, led to 90 booked calls, 30 of which were unqualified. So even though we had the Typeform or had to be cancelled for whatever reason, so even though we had a bunch of like qualification, there were still people who would lie that we would actually triage before their call, and I'll get into this, and actually cancel because they weren't good fits. So in the end, as you can sort of see, 300 submissions. I think we had around 55 like booked calls after the webinar. I'm going to check the data, of course. We tracked everything. Around 55 like qualified booked calls. The close rate was insane. The show rate was super good, and I'm going to get into that just now. So sales, we had 4 closers and 3 SDRs, and normally this offer has 2 closers and 1 SDR. So I had to obviously onboard, create all the SOPs, everything that the set, like we hired like a couple days before the webinar, and I had to get all these new sales reps up to scratch and doing well, right? So we had a pretty much packed calendars day after the offer. We actually ran something pretty interesting. We did a 30-minute call rather than the normal 45-minute call with a 15-minute buffer so that we could have more space on the calendar, which was definitely a good decision. And the reason it was a good decision is because we literally had a 70% close rate on webinar leads that booked a call, as you can imagine. They were literal layups. I mean, these are the call notes from one of the calls from one of the closers. Obviously 5k PIF on August 26th. Most high energy guy I've ever spoken to. Felt like 2 good friends talking. No, he committed without any hesitation, objections, none. Like, it's fucking insane what you can do with webinars when so much trust is built and they know the offer and they're practically ready to buy. Then also we had a super like dialed in SDR team. All the leads that booked, we were hitting them. You have to call them up straight away, because a bunch of leads that book, if a lead books, right, and they're unqualified, they're just a troll, they're taking up a space on the calendar where someone who's super warm could have booked, and then someone who's super warm books 3 days out, and then they're actually not that warm by the time they have the call, and then they don't close. So yeah, triaging booked leads, it was like the number one most important thing the SDRs did, especially on the first day. And then we have a pre-call SOP, so WhatsApp group chats, all of that jazz, for an 85+% show rate off these webinar leads. Then, of course, call all of the applications that didn't book. So every time we had a new Typeform submission, obviously we would get it in Slack, and then they would call up the lead and book them in. And then every time, obviously, a lead booked in from the webinar, they would obviously triage them. Pretty simple. And then also, the next thing that they did, like this was more recently, because obviously the first 2 days is pretty much this, then the next day is this, and then calling attendees that watched but didn't apply. And what you can do on Webinar Jam is actually export the sheet of all of the leads that attended, and then filter them from, on the Google Sheet, from the CSV file, you can actually filter them on by sort of how like how long they stayed in the webinar. So we called all the leads that were watching when we were pitching, call them up straight away, especially all the American, the UK, all of like the higher quality leads. So all of that, and then obviously these two would lead to more booked calls. So those 55 booked calls were not the only calls we booked. Those were just calls booked directly from the webinar. Then also, I mentioned before, we have the WhatsApp sort of group chat SOP where we would send like videos of the creator, voice notes from the creator, value like client interviews, free course that we have, like all of that jazz, right? And reminders, all of that. Then after the webinar, what we did is just put this CTA out to, we've had a crazy number of people apply. We're going to extend the bonuses and the discount we offered on the webinar. So apply here. If you have any questions, just DM me on WhatsApp. And so we had a DM setter in WhatsApp, handling objections, answering those hidden questions, and then booking in leads for calls afterwards as well, which crushed. This genuinely crushed because we had about like 1,700 people on WhatsApp, which was fucking nuts. And then this is something pretty cool I want to show you. It's a lead revival. This is what webinars can do for you. If you're not currently running a webinar like once a month or once every 2 months, like you're missing out. Because look, this was a lead that I actually took a closing call for, and my last follow up was like this was a lead that I spoke to in April. I remember April. Then I asked, how have you been getting on the channel in June? No answer. Then I see that she registers for the masterclass. So I sent her a message telling her to enjoy it, and then after the masterclass, surprise, surprise, she booked a call with one of our closers called Rohan. And then I told her like, nah, bro, this is my lead. As I wanted to close her because I was like, fucking hell, I made this whole webinar. I did everything. Nah, this is my deal. And so then Laurie, of course, wanted to bypass, said the class was amazing. She's ready to do this. And then, yeah, we just talked and then boom, this happened after the webinar. So 2.5k split pay. I was being nice. We probably should have got the piff, but yeah, literally lead revival out of nowhere. You will find that so many leads you have spoken to, so many leads that are sitting there in the pipeline that just wouldn't have closed if we didn't host a masterclass, just come back out of nowhere and pay. Then, almost as important as everything else is the follow-up process. So with Webinar Jam, essentially you can, with Zapier and Webinar Jam, you can basically filter your leads. So as soon as a lead joined the webinar room, in our CRM, which is Close, we would have a filter which was like webinar attended and webinar not attended. Pretty simple, right? So then we would run 2 separate email flows to both of those lists. If they didn't attend the webinar, what we would do is the next morning send them a replay, then send them a replay and then a CTA to apply on the second day, and then on the third day say offer expiring, final chance, call to action, apply, book a call, whatever it is. If they did attend, like they watched some of the webinar, all of the webinar, but they didn't apply, at the end of like straight after the webinar, we would do another CTA to apply to all of those leads because they're probably going to be warm and they might just need that extra push to go ahead and apply and book a call. Or they might have watched the whole webinar and then not seen that they needed to apply for something. So, they might have watched part of the webinar, and then not seen they needed to apply. And then obviously this pushes them to apply and then we get more bookings. The next morning, we actually offer a replay to leads who attend because some people will have missed certain parts. Like I said, some people will want to rewatch certain parts of the webinar. They might have missed the offer. They might have missed this. They might have missed that. So then we offer them a replay, then CTA to apply, and then obviously offer expiring sort of final chance CTA. And what this email flow actually does is it really syncs up with the sales team. So as you can imagine, like I said, they triage the sales team on the first day, maybe second day as well, are just triaging all of the book leads that we get. But then by the second day, the third day, the fourth day, they're actually onto the applications that didn't book and the attendees who watched but didn't apply. And so they, like by the time we're getting to this email here, and this email here, and this email here, the setters are actually calling these leads. And so they're getting emailed, they're getting called, and we're getting them back onto sales calls and getting them closed, which is why even Thursday, we hosted the webinar on a Sunday night, even Thursday we had like a 15k day, Wednesday we had like a 25k day, today's Friday we're going to pace, another 15k probably, simply because of this sort of follow-up process. Then, on top of that, also offering the replay to basically everywhere. So on WhatsApp, where we had like those 1,700 leads, we offered a replay. We offered a replay on a story sequence. We offered a replay on a tweet where they had to comment to get the link. So you can see here, I wrote this tweet and we got 400 leads who reached out for the replay, which is fucking insane. And then obviously the Telegram and all of the emails here, but also to the main email list, we offered a replay. And what you want to do with the replay is build a little landing page, export the download of the webinar to Wistia. Then on Wistia, make sure that they can't skip, so they actually have to watch the whole thing if they want to get to the pitch. Essentially, headline, sub-headline. We did a fake recording expire, so this would just refresh every 24 hours, but it just makes sure they're urgent to watch it. They want to watch it now before it expires. And then apply to Faceless Launchpad Now CTA, which would bring them to the Typeform. And this was just built on Lovable in like literally 5 minutes. I kid you not, I built this website in 5 minutes. And it is 4 days after the webinar ended. And because of this tweet, because of this like follow-up process that we're using, we're still getting webinar applications and we're still getting webinar call bookings, which is fucking nuts. So that is the entire process that I used for this webinar launch. It was crazy. As you can see, we did $119,000 cash collected. In the first 24 hours, I think we did like 56K in 24 hours. And then obviously the next 2 days, we averaged about 25, 27K. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram. And if you want me to run a webinar for you, if you're an offer owner, hit me up. If you want to consult with me on how to actually run a webinar well, and you want to run one for an offer that you do the marketing for, you do the sales for, then once again, my DMs are open. Thank you. Take care.